Hi, Anna, and thank you for taking the time to share a bit of your experience till this day. We are super excited. I'm very excited personally because the topics we're going to discuss today, I'm very passionate about them. And also because you are the first person we interview outside Microsoft and the first person that we interviewed who works actually in the public sector as well. So let's start with the present. You are leading a pillar of the Portuguese Digital Transition Plan, Portugal Digital. So it would be worth if you could share with us a little bit what is this project, what is Portugal Digital, and what is the mission and vision of the plan and the multiple pillars the plan sits on.
First of all, thank you, Carolina and Tanya, for taking the time to approach me, and I hope that well, I can, with giving my testimony, let's say, give a vision of Portugal Digital and of my of how a woman can work in IT with out of Microsoft without giving my personal experience. So, answering your question, Portugal Digital, this government has launched an action plan, Portugal Digital, an action plan for the digital transition. This action plan is basically thought to be the country's transformation engine. Its purpose basically is to accelerate Portugal with the purpose of not leaving anyone behind. And also, through basically divided in 3 pillars, as you said, and basically the empowerment of people, which is pillar 1, the pillar 2, which is the digital transformation of businesses, and pillar 3, the digitalisation of public administration. So basically, these 3 pillars have flagship initiatives. The transition plan. Portugal Digital has 57 measures, but 12 flagship initiatives considered, let's say, core initiatives in each one of the pillars. Pillar 1 is the training and digital inclusion of people, and it has 4 initiatives: the digitalization program for schools, a training program to 3,000 participants, digital inclusion program for 1 million adults, and the social rates of internet access services. Basically, this basically trying to set up a rate of an internet rate dedicated to particular, let's say, part of the society that usually doesn't have access to internet. Pillar 2, it's the digital transformation of businesses. It's the pillar dedicated to companies, let's say. So the 4 flagship initiatives of the pillar 2 are the residency program, digital identity system. The residency is basically dedicated to foreigners who want to invest in Portugal or establish a company in Portugal. So basically, this was the measure. The initiative was born that way, and trying to set up some let's say some initiatives related to that increase the, let's say, the facility of a foreign person or company to establish itself in Portugal. And there is the promotion of technological free zones. Technological free zones are, let's say, zones in which technology will be able to test new technology in Portugal. This initiative is right now in preparation to be launched. Then the digital training program for SMEs in the interior. This purpose of not leaving anyone behind means also not leaving any company behind. We know that, of course, SMEs in the interior are fundamental for the country, and we should not leave them behind. So this training program is designed to reach those companies and try to pull them up, not leave them behind in what refers to digitalization and digital transformation. And digital innovation hubs, which is also a measure dedicated to companies in what refers to innovation and testing of new technologies in Pillar 2. And that measure is, of course, is related to also to the European initiative of digital innovation hubs. We then have the third pillar, which is the pillar I'm responsible for. It has also four initiatives, four core initiatives. The digitalization of 25 public services most used by citizens and companies. And by that, these 25 public services are thought to be the ones more important in a logic of cycle of life cycle for both companies and citizens. And it's related to European legislative initiatives like the digital the gateway, basically, which states that basically the public services must be made available to citizens, if possible, by one only channel or a privileged channel on an easy way. And basically, this 25. Sorry, it's my dog.
The wonders of working from home. Right?
I don't know if you want to interrupt. And,
no, it's fine.
No? Okay. So basically, these 25 services are still to be, let's say, selected, because we really want to make this measure emblematic. So we are making an effort to, let's say, concentrate on 25 really important services for citizens and companies. That may already be digitalized, but not completely dematerialized. Okay, so and then there is the translation of public administration websites into English, and this measure has two parts. This measure is thought to be important for especially, let's say, foreign investors in Portugal. We must ensure that not only in the portal ePortugal, which is the main portal of information and public services online, dedicated to citizens and companies. So we must ensure that at least the information more important for foreign investors is translated into English. Otherwise, we are creating a barrier to of course, to them. And also on the websites of the several public institutions, we must ensure that the information most researched for foreign investors and foreign people in general, it's in English at least. So basically, the single digital gateway, which is the regulation I was talking about before my dog barked, and also states that at least the essential services must be translated into English. And actually, on the 12th of December, the European Union launched a website which has the main information in English. Okay, but we also are going to work with the different services to ensure that the most information most relevant services are available at least in English. Either you want to create a company, or you want to reside in Portugal, to study in Portugal, whatever. The third, let's say, core initiative in the Pillar 3, it's the cloud strategy for public administration, the establishment and implementation of a cloud strategy for public administration. For this, all government areas have been basically drafting a cloud strategy. so that the different government institutions and public institutions in general, when they want to go from local premises into cloud, public cloud, they do that without any fears. They do that looking into the positive points of it, and they do that with a certain, let's say, logic and following certain recommendations. So this cloud strategy will be made public and available for all public institutions that want to become, well, basically move from premises into cloud. And then we have the fourth measure, which is the simplification of contractual procedures of information and communication technology services by public administration. This means that it is there is let's say a certain difficulty in purchasing IT for public administration. Why? Because the processes of purchasing into public administration have to follow certain, of course, certain rules, certain formalities, and many times, well, it takes a little bit longer than we would desire. And so one of the measures of the action plan is to simplify the way that we purchase services related to IT. Okay, that is important also to ensure that all the other measures and all the other digital transformation initiatives are actually implemented. Because if you have a bottleneck that does not allow you to digitally transform your institution, and very difficulty you will pursue with your digital transformation plans. So this is an important measure, and we are working on it still. An important step has been taken by the Parliament, and it's basically right now being reappreciated, that legislative measure that will allow a certain simplification of purchasing measures in IT. So this is, let's say, let's say a first let's say idea of what is the Portugal action plan and Portuguese action plan for digital transition, and there is also to implement all these initiatives. Unit strategy mission was built, which is the Portugal Digital unit structure, and we have also this goal of measuring all these initiatives and being accountable for all these initiatives. So we will inform public in general, and also the let's say the different governmental areas of how this plan is being implemented, and in what stage are we. So this is basically one of the important goals of the plan.
And looking at this is a government-led project and plan, and we know that our governments change often every 4 years if they are not re-elected again. So how is take into account that, for example, the current government, this is their last shift. I don't know if that's the right word. What are we doing to guarantee that with the new government, this project is still prioritized and is still on track, and with the new government, the priorities do not move away from this one, which I believe to be very important for a nation.
It's a very interesting question, Carolina. Basically, if we look into the last 20 years, there wasn't an only government that didn't have some kind of strategy related to digitalization and technology in general. Of course, the approaches are very different. Many approaches are more directed to the citizen. Some approaches are more directed to companies. Some approaches are more directed into technology, public administration, etc. Whatever government succeeds to this government, I'm sorry, I will disconnect my mobile. Whatever government succeeds to this government will have to have some kind of a technology, of a strategy, or a political plan dedicated to technology and to digital transformation, because it is still necessary. We must not cross our arms and see an important part of the society being left out of this. We must intervene. This is basically the focus of Pillar 1, but whatever strategy follows to the action plan for digital transition, we'll have to have this in mind. Our Portuguese companies are not all on the same level. We must at some point intervene in helping them to include technology, include training, to train their human resources. We must look into public services. There's no, and also we are, of course, in the European Union, and there are a lot of initiatives of the European Union that we must follow. So it is impossible that the next government does not have a strategy for the digital. If we are going to be able to, let's say, if a next government will be able to finalize all the purposes of this action plan or not, the ones that are not, let's say, finalized, that some, of course, will be continued. I can only desire that whatever government follows to this government can look into the positive aspects of this action plan and pursue with it, of course. I believe that in this particular area, most part of the work has been let's say, continued, because some structures have been created in terms of modernization of the public administration, some structures that continue independently of the governments, and it is impossible, actually. We are not still at a stage that we can say we don't have a particular strategy for innovation and technology and digital transformation. It's not the case. So basically, we will have to have some kind of strategy.
Thank you, Anna. And I agree. I mean, these efforts, they will be ongoing for many years to come. I don't think they will ever end, because digitalization and technology are not going away. So governments will have to work on this, on these topics, and even maybe work together with other governments and the private sector, the private tech companies, to address, areas like cybersecurity and other areas. So yeah, I definitely agree. This is a priority. Switching topics, we previously discussed a very interesting concept, which is smart legislation. Can you share a bit what this is and how it relates to innovation, and also what's being done not only in Portugal but in Europe in this space?
Okay, thank you, Tanya. This is smart legislation. It's it's a world. It's not worth. I'll try to synthesize it. Basically, law, generally speaking, follows human evolution, and culturally speaking, and basically, when a problem emerges in society, the law comes and regulates it. Okay, it's always been like this since the Romans. So, but we are facing with the innovation. The speed of innovation and the speed of technology evolution, We are facing a situation in which many times the law does not follow it rapidly enough, the technology evolution. So we want to share new to test new technologies, but it is forbidden. So we must find ways to test new technologies with safety, of course, in an environment where some regulation exists. And this regulation must be elastic enough to receive this new technology testing, but also regulate it in some way. This is what we call smart legislation. Okay, so we talk about test beds, we talk about many types of initiatives, free zone areas, let's say, in which free regulation areas in which we test, for instance, cars being conducted without a passenger, without a driver, and we think of numerous, let's say, technology initiatives that must be tested so that they can evolve and they can be solid. And we must, of course, create legislation that it's not static. It's a very interesting topic. And there are different areas. It started in fintech. Basically, it's because finance is a sector that, of course, was very quick in adopting new technologies. You think of Bitcoin, you think of many areas in which, of course, new types of legislation are needed. So basically, this is what smart legislation is. What we are doing in Portugal, we will have an initiative related to that, which is technological free zones. So basically, we will have zones of smart legislation. We will create a legislation that will allow companies to test new technology in Portugal, and with that also promote foreign investment in Portugal in this type of technologies, with artificial intelligence, with you think of whatever new technologies you may think. Those are all let's say technologies that you may think when you think of smart legislation. And yes, at a European level, this issue is also being addressed, of course, and basically stating the boundaries and in some aspects in some sectors, the European Union has to legislate, of course. You think of health, you think of environment. So basically, there are certain lines that you cannot cross, of course. But yes, there are other areas in which you must ensure that you have a secure environment to test new technologies, so that you can really create new products, new services that really make a difference. So we think with this measure, with this initiative, which is in Pillar 2, okay, Portuguese Action Plan for Digital Transition will probably open the gate, we hope so, to very interesting projects come to Portugal to test their new products and services.
It's quite interesting as well, because as a result of this smart legislation, we are looking to transform in a way our economy, because we are bringing people to Portugal to invest. And talking about technology and the role it plays on our economy, over the past few years, it has been very impactful. The impact has been growing, but definitely the past year, technology has played a fundamental role to keep companies rolling and keep people working during the pandemic. So looking at technology, how do you see technology transforming our economy, especially looking at economy recovery after the pandemic? How do you see technology doing that? And also, how can businesses recover and even gain market with technology?
Yeah, well, this past year has been particularly interesting in that aspect. Basically, technology and broad access to internet play a fundamental role on the economic recovery, of course. Actually, technology and broad internet access has served to mitigate the impact of COVID in not only companies, but also people, of course. I think of students, of workers in general, right? So basically, those will, of course, play a fundamental role on the economic recovery that we hope will happen from the beginning of next year. And many things will not remain the same. We probably will think twice before having a meeting personally, because we've come to look into the, let's say, the positive aspects of having online meetings and working collaboratively on a generic way, right? And also to see, well, that not only you can work as well as in person, but also better, more organized. You share the notes of your meeting. You whatever you plan from there. Of course, nothing replaces personal relations, but I think many things will not remain the same. But we must, however, keep in mind that we cannot leave anyone behind through digital inclusion initiatives and training programs dedicated to people, but also to businesses, as I was saying before. Let's say the small, medium enterprises in the interior of the country. So basically, the businesses should see the technology as an opportunity to grow, to minimize whatever a crisis, coronavirus or other crises, happen to be in place. So, and what we saw, of course, this crisis and this pandemic was not. We cannot say it was a positive thing, because it really was not a positive thing. But what was, well, the impact on small businesses, especially, was really big, and many, let's say that jumped steps in digital transformation and will not go back. What we saw, generically speaking, generically, really, in the whole society, was that the technology was there to allow us to work, live, and do things differently, but was not used to some extent. Okay, so what I think was created by this pandemic was the predisposition to use technology on a different way, and to accept technology in our lives on a different way, to accept technology, allowing our students to be in class. I'm sorry. Allowing doctors to consult their patients.
He has something to say as well. He wants to participate in the conversation.
It's a lady, she does. So basically, what really I think it happened during the pandemic was let's say the predisposition, the cultural part, how we saw technology in our lives, and if we take advantage of that, I think we have really created the opportunity to speed up. I think, no, it's not something that I think. I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's basically what the studies are saying, is that we'll be able to speed up the technology evolution and digital transition on a generic way. And this is also what we are trying to do in the public sector. Of course, things happen in different speeds, and what I can do on a small company, it's not the same, or the rhythm is not the same as doing it in the state or doing it on let's say, on a broad level. But I think that technological impact on, let's say, after COVID will make a big difference.
Looking at and talking about about technology, looking at our colleagues around Europe, Portuguese people are quite qualified and very competent. A lot of them go to university. We have a lot of interest around the engineering fields. However, when we compare our education background to the others, we don't see that academic experience being translated into innovation and economical development, in, let's say. So what do you think should be changed? Is it something that should be changed at school, early on in school, or in universities? How can we make sure that the qualifications that the Portuguese people have translates into economical growth and innovation?
It's a very interesting one, your question. And well, basically, it is a fact that Portuguese people are very well qualified in terms of high education and superior education. First, there is something that happens, of course, which is talent goes out of the country. Okay, so first we must address that issue, which is to attract talent from the moment it goes out of a university. I've worked abroad for some years in Spain. I worked with a lot of countries in the European Union, and so it is a fact that Portuguese resources are very well seen out of the country. Portuguese professionals usually have a good level of languages, especially English. Our universities are among the best in the world, independently of the area. Okay, so this actually we have to address first the issue of maintaining the resources in Portugal. So for that we have to create of course the opportunities for them, and it's a cycle. Many governments have, of course, developed initiatives for this, but of course, this action plan also has initiatives dedicated to this issue, because you have to be able to create a different relationship between the market and the university, the market and schools, and you have to also push technology related training courses and also let's say areas in universities, in training courses, let's say subjects, and then it's one of the points is to have a different relationship between the companies and universities in general, and you have to basically think of how can you make Portugal attractive to Portuguese that finish this university, especially in the technological area. Okay, because we know that at a European level there is a lack of resources in technology. Okay, many small and medium companies in Portugal are very let's say have a lot of difficulty retaining and attracting Portuguese resources. They cannot afford them in many cases. I've talked to small companies in the interior of Portugal that cannot afford to have an informatic engineer because they know that after 3 to 6 months they will receive another offer and they will leave. Okay, so this is an issue. But we've seen in terms of offer a movement on the last years of very important companies opening their premises in Portugal. We've seen the impact that Web Summit has had. So Portugal is becoming more and more attractive to foreign investments in terms of technology and in terms of investment in the digital, let's say. And we must foster that. We must cherish that. We must really work on initiatives that promotes that, because that will allow Portuguese students, highly qualified students, to become to stay in and to create innovation, also to be part of the process of creating innovation.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. Like, I'm part of a generation that, so many of my colleagues, my peers who attended university with me, they are not in Portugal right now. So I agree, it would be amazing if we could transform, create the conditions and the opportunities and transform Portugal into a technological hub. That would be amazing. So Anna, and we kind of touched on this topic a bit before. So technology in general, and I would say social media in particular, they have been instrumental in connecting both people and businesses, especially in COVID times. And despite the many benefits social media provides, there are also, I would say, some downsides. So I guess my question for you is, how do you think social media is impacting democracies and societies around the world? The good and the maybe not so good about it.
These ethical questions are, let's say, some that I cherish a lot. So social media, generically speaking, of course, are a means to share information, to make people in general more participants, and of course they are an instrument of participation and of democracy that we cannot deny. But we must also have a strong preoccupation of creating consciousness, creating awareness, and especially about the ethical point behind all of that. So, and we must work especially with fragile groups, children and teenagers especially, because those are the special groups to be focused on what concerns this issue, because they have access to internet. Elderly groups are also fragile, but usually they do not have such a free access to internet and to technology in general. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we must focus on training, we must focus on education from the schools, at home. We must have initiatives for that. Government must have initiatives for that. Because, of course, by creating awareness and training on media literacy, we will be able to, let's say, make this target more strong to fight, let's say, fake news, to identify fake news, for instance, to fight it and to resist to its influence. Of course, if I'm not so informed about whatever subject, I believe what I read. So I must have critic sense. I must have the awareness to look into whatever subject and to be able to have a critic spirit. So we must really work, especially with this type of groups, and generically regulating, of course, this issue. European Union has been launched in June, July, a very interesting report that basically said that during the pandemic, more than 2,000 fake news a day were published.
Wow.
Okay? And so, of course, we have to address this issue. Okay, what are the limits of the regulation that we must create? That is something that we must work on, of course. But I would say that main focus should be in educating, in informing, and in creating a resilient public that can identify, of course, fake news and other issues, and especially to children and teenagers, we must work on tools and methodologies that help us to filter, of course, information, to especially in what relates to children, the type of information they have, especially because during the pandemic, of course, the ones that didn't have, many of them had access to technological tools that allow them to use internet. So we must be always vigilant as parents, as teachers, in general, to help this public in what concerns, let's say, the social media.
It's quite interesting, and the fake news one has been quite prevalent, quite a hot topic, let's say, over the past few months. And as part of social media, in the beginning, I think people were very helpful, but then I think in social media we now are in a very prone to bullying space. So talking about government's role and regulate social media, what should governments do in this space? We talked about media literacy and teaching our kids to be more aware of and more critical, as well as adults. A lot of the problem, to be fair, is with adults, not with kids at the moment. But do you feel that should governments regulate social media in the sense, for example, that an account should be associated, for example, to an ID? So you can only create a Facebook account, for example, if you provide your ID details. So then you can't. So you become more accountable to what you share, to the type of comments you make on the platforms. Because we've been seeing a despair of evilness in a way as well, and as well there's some of this fake news are just created just to annoy other people. So is there something that can be done in these lines from the government side?
A very interesting point. We must not forget when we think of internet that we are thinking of a worldwide territory. So it is very difficult to create a regulation like that on a country basis. It would be very difficultly to implement. Very difficult, if not to say impossible. There would have to be a worldwide consensus about that, and I must say that. And it's very difficult for one side. For the other side, we must not. We must maintain this balance between the positive aspects of social media as a tool also to promote democracy and as a tool for some initiatives to reach the public. Think of all the awareness initiatives about environment, etc., even of human rights violation, etc. So many times this is the only channel that many of these groups have to communicate and reach social opinion. So it's very difficult to imagine a situation like that, in which you would have profiles related to real IDs. It would also, I think, create probably let's say, cybersecurity issues, because you can imagine if those data would reach, let's say, would be revealed or made public. So I don't think that the evolution it goes that way. I believe it will go more of regulation of the let's say the content itself, but on a not on a evaluation and validation of content beforehand, but of course ways to, of course, act. The government must find ways to act, and many of the measures already are in place, but it's very difficult to act on social media. But you can, of course, have some. There is legislation, of course, for that at the Portuguese and at the European level. You can, of course, control certain type of contents, but on, let's say, not before they are published. There is not that a possibility in terms of legislation, and we are glad that it doesn't happen, because there is not the possibility of having especially a public, let's say, entity controlling content. That is not the way that we want, let's say, this type of issue to be addressed. So it is a balance difficult to reach, in fact, but I think that first it will have to be fought on a worldwide level, especially, well, on our case, beginning on a European level. We've seen also that this type of the companies that own social media, they are imposing auto-regulation. Okay, and when they see that a certain content is illegal, publishing is illegal, is fake, we've seen them closing pages. We've seen them taking content out. So I think that, of course, we'll probably go more that way. In what concerns crime and cybercrime in general, I think that, well, at a worldwide level, we must find, of course, ways to keep pursuing cybercrime in a generic way. It is like it is a cycle, because, of course, that as technology evolves, it will evolve also for the crime side, and of course that new ways to let's say protect content, illegal content, appear every day. Cryptography, etc. So the dark web. So policies, of course, and governments on a worldwide level fight that every day with legislation and also with measures. But we must, at that point, find quicker ways and more effective ways to fight what is considered cybercrime. Because, of course, many of the things that we talk to when we are talking about, let's say, fake news are not necessarily crime, okay? But they may become crime, especially, well, of course, depending on the impact they have on people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree. I think it's a very challenging one to address, keeping the balance between allowing citizens to have their freedoms while at the same time trying to regulate this space. And we have seen some partnerships both between governments and the tech sector. We have seen that, and yeah, I agree that we will see more and more of that, but it's definitely a very challenging one to address. Anna, we would like to thank you for your time, for all the insights today. All of these are very relevant and serious, topics and issues. Thank you for, sharing your perspectives with us. And to finalize, we usually like to end in a very, a lighter and funnier way. So we have a this or that challenge for you. So which one do you prefer? Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Definitely coffee.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Movies or books?
Both, actually. Both.
Oh, cool.
Interesting question.
Beach or mountain?
Both also.
Do you prefer theater or cinema?
I love both. It's a very different experience. Theater is much more intimate, especially if it's a small theater, and if it's a good set of actors, or if, well, depending on also on the play, especially like research theater or out of the box approach is like you're having the actors next to you, not necessarily at the stage, but cinema it's a very involving experience. So basically both.
We can have both. Winter or summer?
That's summer, especially because of the light. Yeah.
Going out or staying in?
Going out.
Sunrise or sunset?
I would say sunrise. That has changed since I had kids.
I can imagine. Comedy or drama?
Depends on the mood. Depends on the mood, basically. I think I like both. It's more difficult to have good comedy than good drama, but
indeed. And the last one, shopping online or shopping in store?
Depends on what to shop. Well, to shop online allows you to be more rational, allows you to be more organized, of course. But to buy the groceries of the day-to-day and the fruits and vegetables, I like to see things to look it into with my eyes. I like that interaction with and also other type of things. Yeah, shops. But I think both, if you can.
Yeah, I'm with you. So Anna, from our side, it was an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. We learned a lot. We hope this was fun for you as well. And again, thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely, it was fun. I hope to have contributed to your project. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.